At this current time in life, in history, we are collectively learning to acknowledge each other differently right now. So in this lockdown or quarantine or pandemic, and in this collective, literally worldwide experience right now, there is an opportunity to learn better ways to communicate with each other, whether it's in our own homes, so with your partner. If I feel like if you don't use this as an opportunity to really dig in and find better ways to communicate and work together, then you're wasting the opportunity. But the same with the people that you live with in other ways, your children, your housemates, but also in how we acknowledge each other virtually as well. So we are learning to, hopefully most of us are learning to not minimize another's experience or fears and struggles. So while someone like me who isn't in a relationship can sort of look at a couple who are in isolation together and say, well, you have it really lucky, you have it really fortunate, that would minimize their experience, because maybe they have children that they are learning to set up homeschooling, or maybe they have different job situations that are impacting how they're handling this. So there is no one more or less than the other in that everyday sense. And I feel like collectively there's an opportunity to learn, but I feel like we are learning that there are different ways to acknowledge another person's experience, even if they are not the same experience as our own. And that is really important as humans, as functioning humans, as humans who can develop and show empathy and compassion and learn how to acknowledge other people's experiences, even when they aren't the same experiences as ourselves. There's a power in that, in how we then connect with and acknowledge each other even more. But we're also being more deliberate with our time and our communication. So we're looking at who do we prioritize, or how do we prioritize when we know we won't see this person in however long, right? So aside from work things, we're looking at how we prioritize and who we prioritize in our personal lives, as far as connecting with, doing video calls with, to stay connected with, or checking in and seeing how they're doing, how they're handling things, what's going on for them in their lives. We're looking at, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, who and how we prioritize the people that we spend time and energy on and make time and energy for. So we are always making time for people. It doesn't happen by accident. And when we connect with other people, it requires the energy of setting aside time or making time for them. So we are coming into this whole paradigm shift of how we acknowledge each other right now, and we're learning a different way of acknowledging each other in all of these different facets, whether it's a communication in home, or connection and energy and checking in with, making time for those we can't see in person, and whether or not that changes. If we know that we can't see them in person in months, then what does that mean for how we show up or prioritize them now? And that can tell us the lesson here. All of these things you may have already acknowledged, but the lesson here is it's a collective learning about ourselves individually, but ourselves as a race, as a society, as all of these things. But we have this opportunity to learn, if we choose to dive in deep enough, to learn what our priorities are, to learn how it is we automatically show up and acknowledge others, and how it's actually useful to show up and acknowledge others. And that will change from person to person, depending on your own personal value sets and your own circumstances. Maybe you're finding this a struggle and challenging time, and maybe that impacts how you then show up or how you then make time for others. And that's okay as well. But there's a learning in that, in noticing how we show up when we are feeling challenged as well. So in this new paradigm shift of learning about ourselves and learning to acknowledge each other as humans, as people we care about, or as people we want in our lives differently, there is so much to unpack there. And while I definitely feel like it is a time that we should be gentle with ourselves as far as processing what we're going through, what we're feeling, what this might mean for us in the unknown, but also encouraging ourselves gently to find our routine and find and embrace and allow this new way forward as well, because there is an element of surrender required. Otherwise, we create resistance upon resistance and we make it harder for ourselves as well. So there's this huge opportunity, and I don't mean in the way that a lot of self-help people are spouting of, you know, write that book or do that thing that you've always wanted to do when there's this collective experience going on. But there is this huge opportunity to learn and unpeel the layers within ourselves in how we relate to ourselves, but also how we relate to and acknowledge others, and the ways in which we prioritize that. We've been given time to look at that and maybe adjust our sails for that so we can set course for a direction that actually feels more in alignment with how we want to show up for ourselves or for others. And that's really important to do as well. And sometimes we don't feel like we have the opportunity to do that because we have life going on, we have busyness going on. Work might be hugely busy for you, but you can still use the time to notice how you show up in that and what happens when work is super busy for you in this instance, if that's the case for you, and what that means for how you acknowledge others or how you perceive others and their situations, or how you show empathy, or how you communicate, or how you prioritize. There's just this huge learning and peeling back the layers can feel uncomfortable sometimes, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's also an opportunity to grow and to expand our sense of self and how we evolve and how we show up in the world. And that is going to be priceless in what happens as your life moves forward from this, as this starts to move through, and as we start to eventually get to the other side of this. That will be really key in how much you've allowed that and use this time for that. And that's still being gentle, that's still being and taking care of yourself in that and not forcing, but there is the opportunity there. So one to ponder, more than anything, more than a to-do as such, there is a lot to ponder in that and see where it feels most useful for you to check in with.